Hey guys, welcome back to the Life of Color podcast. I just wanted to hop on and let you know that this podcast is not only just on YouTube, but it's also on every major podcasting platform as well. So I encourage you to go ahead and like us, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, give us a rating, and also share this podcast on social media because this has an incredible message of hope and recovery from eating disorders. And the more people we can reach, the more that we can help and make an impact. So thank you so much for your support. Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Life of Color podcast. I'm your host, Katie Noyad, and today we're going to be doing another episode in the recovery series. This series seeks to examine the intersection between eating disorders in different societies, as well as highlight stories of hope and recovery from individuals around the world. Please note that stories shared in the recovery series may be potentially triggering, so listener discretion is advised. But today I'm joined with Amandah Wilkinson. How's it going, Amanda? Or Amanda? I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Amanda, I just learned, I've known Amanda for, 6 months now, and I just learned that I've been saying her name incorrectly, so it's Amandah.
Oh,
Yes.
It's okay. I probably shouldn't have sprung it on you, so.
I know. I'm so happy you did. But anyway, she's going to be sharing her recovery story growing up in Australia, then moving to the UK. And another exciting thing is that she also was an international music sensation. So she's going to be talking a little bit about her music background. It's true. But shall I dive into your biography then?
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Sounds good. So Amandah Wilkinson is an ARIA award-winning singer and songwriter from the Gold Coast, Australia. From 2005 to 2011, her band Operator Please was an international sensation that toured globally and was, according to The Guardian, the biggest thing to come out of Australia in years. After Operator Please disbanded, Amandah moved to the UK and started a new band, Bossy Love, which is played at Glastonbury Festival and support the likes of Kellis, Metronomy, and Block Party. Amandah now lives in Denmark, and her music can be found on Spotify, iTunes, and Netflix. So it's so exciting, and I actually met Amandah when I came back to Denmark in February and started taking Danish lessons. So it's really exciting, the people you get to meet from living abroad in an international society. So you're definitely one of the most interesting people that I've met here. And there are a lot of interesting people here too. So it's very true.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice.
Definitely. But thank you so much for being on the show today. And I'm very excited to dive into the questions. So you are from Australia, your mom is from Indonesia, and your dad is from England. So It's safe to say that you've had a very international upbringing. Can you share a little bit about what that was like when you were growing up?
I mean, obviously when you're growing up, you don't really think any differently of it, do you? Mm-hmm. Until you kind of start going to school and then you realize that you're different. Mm-hmm. So I spent my formative, growing up years from up until about, I think it was about 8 years old actually, in New Zealand, because my father was actually an engineer. So he worked for Shell. That's where I grew up. I grew up in New Zealand up until about 8 years old. And obviously in New Zealand, there's loads of walks of life and there's loads of different nationalities and stuff like that. So growing up at primary school there, I never really felt, different because I was surrounded by, loads of cultures. You had Samoan kids, you had Maori children, you had there was every kind of nationality there, growing up in like a rich environment where you learnt also about, Maori folklore and folk stories. And we had a marae, which is like a Maori church on the grounds at my primary school. And we used to go to Auntie Emma. And she was like, everybody's auntie pretty much. And she used to bring you into the marae, and you would learn a little bit of Maori. You'd learn how to address your peers in Maori. And you would also go and listen to folk stories, Maori folk stories. And the one thing that I took away from it all was that it's so important to like have a sense of self and believe in yourself. So I had that idea kind of instilled in me from a really young age, which I'm so grateful for. And I guess growing up with an Indonesian mother, the main differences you realize are just little things. you know, you eat different food for breakfast. You pack a different looking lunch. And then, I guess like, sometimes when you're younger, you can kind of feel a little bit displaced, because that's a whole other story about being mixed race, or being, you know, half Indonesian and then half, you know, white type thing, is that it takes a while for you to really find your place when you're that young person, because it's a very complex, now that I look back on it, it's a very complex thing to try and not get used to, because you're already used to it, but express yourself in.
Yeah. And then you moved to Australia then when you were 9 years old, is that correct?
No, just like after I turned 8. It might have actually been just before my 8th birthday.
Oh, okay.
I moved to Australia, just because my dad, you know, obviously he wanted more opportunity for us. New Zealand's obviously at that time was a very small place. And so he moved us to Australia for the opportunities, you know, because it was a bigger country and maybe he could get better work there and things like that.
Sure. And then from there too, was music a part of your experience from the time that you were in New Zealand, from when you were growing up to when you moved to Australia, or how did that blossom?
Okay, well, there was always music in the house, always. Mum always used to sing in the house. There was always instruments in the house. And when Mum would invite over, so where we lived in New Zealand, it was New Plymouth. So there was if I'm correct, like this is me trying to think back to like 5 years old and stuff, there was a docking yard, right? And because my dad worked as an engineer, he obviously used to do offshore as well. And there was a lot of workers coming in from Indonesia, actually. So what my mum would do was go down and greet them like family and invite them to dinner. And so like we always had a house full of people, and everybody could sing and everybody could play an instrument. So there was a lot of music. And then even, you know, going to school in New Zealand, the range of performances that we used to get exposed to there was incredible as well. So we'd have traditional days like where all the whole Maori community around the school, because it was a community school, would come in and they would do the traditional dance. So the haka was like a normal thing at my school that people did at assembly, you know, and then you know, you learn about the dances with the poi poi. It's hard to explain the poi poi. You might just have to.
I'll have to Google it. Yeah.
So it was. I always was surrounded by music, but I didn't actually really know that that I wanted to make it myself until I turned about 12 or 13. I always had listened to music, you know. So. I think the first album I ever bought with my own money was and this is just full circle, was No Doubt Tragic Kingdom. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah, like that was the first album I bought with my own pocket money. But when I was younger, I would, you know, I was always attracted to music. I would go to the music shop and find the $1 cassette tape bin and rummage through it. And that's how I discovered the Fugees, funnily enough.
Okay.
You know, being 7 years, I think I was 7 years old, and I just saw the tape cover and I was like, this looks cool. I'm going to, you know, I didn't know anything about it. And then, you know, Lauryn Hill has become such a huge part of my musical journey. So and it was only until I turned about 13 that I was like, I wonder if I could, because I saw this is how it started. I saw a guitar. House always had guitars. Guitar in the corner. I was watching like video hits or something in the morning, and I looked over at the guitar and I was like, I wonder if I could play that.
Wow. You taught yourself then?
Well, in the beginning, so I you know, did a little Google, and or asked Jeeves at that time, and I was like,
I forgot about that. Ask Jeeves. Whoa, whoa, taking me back, sure.
I was like, how to play the guitar? How can I teach myself the guitar? And I learned about tabulation, which is you know, tabs on the guitar, which is not like your standard musical notes or anything. It's like numbers and frets. And I was like, okay, I can get down with this. I'll try and play this. And then so I taught myself how to play Celebrity Skin by Hole, because that was like the number one song at the time. So I learned how to play that on guitar, and then my dad was like, oh, you're quite good at that. Maybe do you want to go to lessons? And then I started guitar lessons.
Wow.
So yeah, it all kind of started from there.
Okay. I have a lot of respect for that too, because I dabbled into a lot of different musical instruments when I was younger. I don't know if in New Zealand or Australia you guys had that accordion, that like plastic flute that was like, or was it down here?
Yeah,
down here. It was either in front of your mouth or it was whatever color you wanted.
And it had colorful,
Oh God, yeah. It was like nails on chalkboard. I did that. A recorder, not an accordion. And then I played the violin. I wasn't good at that. I played the piano. Wasn't good at that. Even had a ukulele unit. Like I have no musical ability. So the fact that you were able to teach yourself and then launch this career was absolutely incredible.
I never think of it that way, but when I guess when you're like in it, you don't think of it that way, do you know? And even when I like talk about Operator Please, or I talk about Bossy Love and everything that we've done, it's not until you're kind of like look back on it that you realize how much you actually did. Because when you're in it, you're just in it, and that's just how it is.
And let's go ahead and dive into some of the things that you were into. So it was their high school Battle of the Bands competition that really set the ball rolling with Operator Please. From there, you got bigger and bigger. You opened for the Arctic Monkeys. You also worked with Gwen Stefani. And then,
no doubt,
Yeah, I mean, incredible. And then you were able to tour around the world playing music as well. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, it's wild because I was so young, and but the rest of the band members were very young as well. And to even think that we went on tour kind of without any, you know, parental guardians or whatever is crazy to me now. Because even I look back on it and I was like, what the hell? How? But I guess it's because I kind of turned into like mum figure, you know, so I had to grow up very quick because I had I felt responsible for my band members because they were younger than me. And I felt like I needed to shield them from everything. And so I would take on everything, every responsibility, all the stresses, because I just didn't want them to have to deal with it, you know? And I think back then it could have felt for them like I was trying to exclude them from the conversation, but that's just not the case. It was that I knew how harsh that life could be, and I wanted to protect them at all costs. The other members were 15. So there was 2 members that were 15 and 16 that dropped out of school and were doing school by correspondence.
Wow.
Because they were of the view, as was I at the time, that, you know, this kind of opportunity doesn't really come around twice. So when you have it, you need to go. You need to take it, you know, because you don't want to wonder what if you did take it, you'd have to take it. And there was 16, and then I started the band at 16, 17, and then things really kind of kicked off at the end of my beginning of my 18th. When I turned 18.
And then you toured for quite a long time too. And that experience, what was that like to go to so many countries when you're so young? And
I mean, it's made me who I am. It's made me appreciate different cultures. It's made me a more respectful person, I believe, a more thoughtful and caring person. And it also makes you appreciate your home life as well. Because I think in the beginning, I was so desperate to get out of the Gold Coast. And then coming back there, it made me appreciate it more, you know, appreciate family life, appreciate the small things in life, like catching up with a friend for a coffee, because there was a period of time where I didn't see anybody. I didn't go to any 18th birthdays. I didn't go to any birthday parties, any family birthdays, because I just wasn't there. It was an incredible experience, and it's afforded me the life that I have now. And it made me curious. It made me forever curious to learn about life, to learn about the world, to learn about how things work. Those were some of the best times of my life. At the time when you're in it and you're touring, it's obviously physically and mentally exhausting because, you know, not going to lie, you're stuck in a van with like 4 other your bandmates, and your sound guy, your tech guy. You're stuck in a van with them. You're married to them for the whole time you're on.
Yeah, but you guys got really close when you were touring then.
Yes, too close. And, by the end of the tour, I think on our last tour, we were in Japan. And by that time, we were just so sick of each other that we refused to kind of stay in the same rooms.
Okay. Well, being in a bus for so long will do that to you. I can imagine.
Well,
I've gone on many a road trip, so.
I mean, you start to pick at each other for the stupidest, littlest things because you're in each other's face constantly.
Yeah.
And so it is physically, mentally exhausting, and having to I knew there was times where we would get off a plane after a 24-hour flight from Australia and we would play a show.
Wow.
So we'd get off the plane, drive to Brighton and play a show.
Just so,
and
so sleepy.
Yeah. And I came off stage and I cried because I was so tired. So yeah, there's stuff like that and stuff like, okay, so you've got to drive from Ireland to France. And as soon as you get out of the car in France, there's going to be a video. You're going to do a video interview and they're going to record you. And so you have to wake up at 2:00 in the morning, get fresh, drive this entire time, be absolutely shattered, and then get out and be good for camera. So it's in the grand scheme of things, people might think this is first world problems for me to be complaining about, but it takes a toll on your mental and physical health for sure.
Yeah.
And then having to play a show and bring it and just
give 100% from all different angles, all day. Yeah.
And just and doing, and doing press and stuff like that. And so it was a lot. It was a lot of work. I don't regret any of it. I just wish that I had more fun.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And what was it like to be in the public eye at such an early age too, and to have to give those interviews when you had no sleep and you wanted to put your best foot forward, but what was that like?
It was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Having to, and you don't always get the best interview questions, do you? So sometimes it's just repeating everything you've ever said already, which isn't the interviewer's fault. They're just doing their job. But, when you're in it, it's you could have just Googled this and then asked me something else. Sure. That's the attitude you have because you're just so exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, you just have to put on your brave face and just go for it. You just have to kind of be present. It was a lot of work and kind of growing up and I guess we dealt with a lot of external criticism and bullying, I guess, because we were a lot younger than everybody else. So, and I didn't really have any female mentors to look up to because it just wasn't that environment. It was very dog eat dog. So in turn you find yourself slipping into that mentality as well because it's everybody else is doing it, so why should I be different? Instead of kind of going against the grain and breaking that mold. It was and you obviously having to deal with people in your normal everyday people thinking that it's okay to give their opinion to your face on you in a shopping center because you're a lot younger. And because they know so much better, apparently.
Yeah. So but to them, you're not a person. You're this kind of ideal. So they don't recognize that you have feelings, that you're real.
That we're real people, and that it's not cool. And you wouldn't go up to just anyone else and start yelling at them in their face in the supermarket, telling them that they should improve and get better, or telling them that you're too ugly to be a lead singer and stuff like that. So it's, I had a very, I was very painful for me. And I don't know how painful it was for the other members of the band. I'm sure that they have their own issues with it, but it's obviously not mine to explain because I have no idea. But it was extremely painful for me at that time of growing up in the public eye, so much so that you just turn into another person. As a defense mechanism, you turn cold and you just shut yourself off. And so, I got a reputation for being a diva, for being difficult. And I was just in pain. I was just trying to figure out how can I not let go of this pain, but how can I change it? What can I do to turn it into a positive experience? And I was trying so hard. But then sometimes when you just feel like you're being kicked down the entire time, you can't. There's no way. You just turn and you turn into like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like, it doesn't feel like you. Constantly feeling as though you have to defend yourself, constantly being paranoid, constantly being on your back foot, like ready to go. It was awful. And coming out of it, and that's the dark side of it, there's so many positive experiences, but there is also a lot of darkness that you have to deal with.
Those are real too. And so it sounds like so much pressure, but also an incredible opportunity. An opportunity that not everyone has in life, but and also I hear that it was challenging at times too.
And like just having to deal with the death threats and like stuff like that. Like getting sent death threats to your email or to like your MySpace lol, your Facebook, a critique from like people telling you how to improve your performance on Facebook, and like just belittling you on Facebook, and people doing it in public, and media doing it in the newspapers, and people doing it on the radio and Twitter, and like just having to deal with like criticism from every angle, and also like very grateful for all the support, but it is very 50-50. It is a very fine line.
What's so interesting too is that when you have feedback from someone, even if they do that feedback sandwich where it's like, you're the best, this wasn't so good, but you're also really great, the only thing that people hear is the middle part too. So it is tricky. And I imagine you became huge when MySpace was really out there, and the start of Facebook.
I don't even think it was the start of Facebook. I think Facebook came like when we were halfway through a tour. I was like, what is this?
But that adds another element too. So
it does, but like Twitter, social media, like that
it's
was
a whole other level.
Yes, because it was the beginning of social media and stuff where people really didn't give a shit about what they said. So now you have like things in place where people can be held accountable for what they say on the internet. People find your IP and like call you out. It wasn't like that back then. It was just like, it was the birth of the keyboard warrior.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine, just as a normal girl, seeing comments is always interesting. Fortunately, I'm not big enough to have any comments that give me like death threats at all. And I can't imagine the toll that would take on you as well. But I think what's really cool about you is I think you've developed a really good mentality on life. And I remember one time you were telling me about what bravery is to you. And you're saying that the bravest thing that you can do in a society is just be yourself. So it sounds like you've actually learned quite a bit from your time touring, your time as a musician. And can you speak to that mentality at all?
That's just so punk. It's like
it was poetic. I was like, this girl is a songwriter. It's amazing.
It's just like the more and more you try to hide yourself and shrink yourself, the more and more you lose your touch with yourself. And the most important thing you have is, the relationship you have with yourself. It's not what like everybody else thinks. It's not what the man down the road thinks. It's not even what your family thinks. It's not even what your friends think. It's like, what do you think about yourself? And like learning to love yourself after going through, after being in the public eye and being told you're wrong, you're bad, all of these external things, and starting to believe them because you're like, told, because you see them and you're told them so many times. It takes a long time to kind of learn to love yourself and respect yourself. And no, it's not my issue. It's not my problem. I'm acting out. And you've got to understand also why you're acting out and why your behavior is, you have to like own up to your behavior as well. I'm like, why am I acting like this? Why am I acting like that? Is it because I think that what everybody's saying is true? It's because I'm starting to believe what everybody's saying is true. And then you become that, the I am, you become that
identity.
And so it's so important to just kind of learn that and this is what RuPaul says, what people think of you is none of your business. And it's true. Because like it only matters what you know, how do you feel about yourself? What do you think of yourself? What kind of energy are you leaving behind when you have interactions with people? Are you leaving behind like negative, murky, horrible energy? Or are you going to leave behind good energy, you know, where people can get swept up in that? And it's infectious, you know. Good energy is really infectious. And so is dark energy. But you don't want to be leaving behind toxic energy when you're having your daily interactions or when you're interacting with anybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I believe that the truth is to just be yourself. And that's the only way you're ever going to be happy is if you're truly yourself.
Yeah.
You know what it feels.
Yourself.
Yeah, but you know what it feels like when you're not being yourself. You get those knots in your stomach. You get that weird lump in your throat. You get that, you know, your shoulders. You're all like,
yeah, it doesn't feel right. Yeah.
It doesn't.
You've said something really interesting too, that with eating disorders too, there's this feeling that you're not enough, or sometimes you don't feel comfortable in your skin. So you kind of start to shrink yourself physically, with your words as well. You make yourself smaller and smaller. And I think it's important that when people do have an eating disorder, or even if they don't too, that people are able to take back their voice and take back their sense of self too. And it's so important. And that kind of segues into my next question is, this podcast examines the intersection between eating disorders in different societies around the world, and it shares recovery stories and stories of hope. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share a little bit about your background too and your recovery story.
Yeah, of course. So, you know, this is the first time I'm going on record actually speaking about this. And that's because I feel safe and I trust you, and there hasn't been like another person who I felt like I could really divulge this kind of stuff to, apart from like my kinesiologist, of course, who was amazing. And
we'll get to that.
Close members of my family. So I think obviously with every other part of my life, because I live a creative life and I'm all about chasing your dreams and having hope, and that stuff you can't really control, can you? So that's out of my control. I have to leave it up to whatever. Like whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I can't, when you write a song and you put it out there, you can't control who hears it. You can't control who says what about it. And it's the same when you kind of go out into public every day. You can't control the narrative around what people think of you. You know, you can control your own narrative. And so for me, I developed an eating disorder because I had lack of control of other places in my life. I felt I had lack of control. And I mean, food was an easy way to, an easy thing to control. And I think also when you're kind of, you feel as though you're relentlessly bullied in media for looking different and being, you know, not thin, or being just being different, because I don't want to attach any negative connotation to, you know, anybody's size or anybody's bodies or anything like that. But when you look different, when you're a mixed race Indonesian girl playing guitar at the front of a kind of, you know, whatever pop punk band, and you're not the cookie cutter image that people expect to see, you start to get disappointed that people are so disappointed in how you look. And then that's where my eating disorder started. So that's where my eating disorder started. And so it took me 15 years to admit that I had an eating disorder.
Wow. Did you feel like you knew that you had it too? Or in the beginning, was it?
So in the beginning, I would constantly say to myself, oh, no, this is just nothing, and you just forget about it. It won't happen again. You know, as you constantly do, it's like, this won't happen again. I don't have a problem. No, it's fine. I can control it.
Yeah.
But it took me 15 years to actually say out loud, you have an eating disorder, Amandah. Or admit to myself that I had a problem.
And such a painful thing to go through too. So 15 years of going through that and having those messages sink in, and my heart goes out to you for that experience too.
Thank you.
Yeah. But then you did end up seeking treatment and that was when you lived in Scotland, because you've also lived in England as well. So when you were in Scotland,
So I think like my family had an inkling that I had issues. Like my sister knew, my mother knew. Yeah, my sister and my mother knew that I had issues. I just don't think, I never divulged how deep they were, really, because I felt like that was a burden for them. Because there was already so much going on with me emotionally. Like there was a year where I didn't leave the house. So there was like, because I was too scared to go out into public, because of being followed with like phone cameras and like all sorts.
Wow.
You know?
Okay.
Or so there was a year where I didn't go out in public. I didn't even, my bandmates, you know, this is maybe be the first time that they're hearing this as well. And it wasn't intentional to keep them out of the narrative. It was just that I really felt like it was just unnecessary, do you know?
Yeah.
I was diminishing my problem into something so small, keeping it in this tiny box and pushing it down, which just, you know, obviously exacerbates the issue.
Yeah, isolation is such a difficult thing with eating disorders as well.
Yeah, and you just you isolate. And, you know, a lot of the time, if I did try or open up about it, you know, the narrative back then was, oh, just from looking at you, you can't possibly have an eating disorder. You know? Because apparently there's an archetype for how you should look when you have an eating disorder, apparently.
And that's such crap too. And I think these conversations are so important, because eating disorders, you cannot look at someone and tell their physical health, for one, and you can't tell if they are struggling with an eating disorder. And there's more than one type of eating disorder too, you know. Someone can be anorexic and look completely different, you know. Someone with binge eating disorder can look completely different. So I think we need to squash those stereotypes too.
The stereotypes are so dangerous and so detrimental, and they add into the vicious cycle of mental health and seeking mental health. They add into this vicious cycle the idea that somebody can try and assess you and tell you that you've got nothing wrong with you. Some external factor can try to tell you, the person experiencing this, that there is nothing wrong with you from looking at you. It's it's disgusting. It's infuriating, because when you're actually reaching out for that help and you are not being believed, where do you go?
Yeah.
You know, so I had this, a couple of times where I tried to explain what was happening with me. And, this is absolutely horrible. So someone turned around to me and said, well, maybe you should, what about if you tried Jenny Craig? And I was like,
are you kidding me?
Yeah. And it was an assistant manager for the band. So you can imagine how betrayed I felt. And that betrayed, I felt that the people around me that were supposed to be there for support, adults, were dismissing that there was a problem.
Invalidating. And
invalidating
don't feel
it
seen.
Completely. No. And so that led to excessive kind of partying, because I was just like, oh, okay, well, I'll just go on tour and I will like drink half a whole bottle of red wine before I get on stage and play. Just like,
kind of self-medicating too.
100%. You try your hardest to eliminate it, push it down. You go to all these like industry parties, you get blackout drunk. So that was in Australia. And then when I kind of was able to separate myself and move overseas, my problem did continue. And obviously being in a new environment, especially moving to London where everything's very difficult, it was exacerbated.
Okay.
So I spent the beginning of my time in London was like 6 months. And obviously London's a very hard city to live in, because it's very hard to find a place to live when it's very expensive. And so for 6 months you're trying to navigate your life, and I was like, okay, cool, start fresh, I can leave everything behind. No. Doesn't work like that, does it?
Yeah.
Just
I've
comes with
been
you.
through the same thing. Yeah. It goes with you. Yeah.
And so, it was exacerbated a lot when I was in London, just because and again, everything else is out of your control, you know? So that's where it comes from. It's like the wanting to be able to control your life to the T, but it not going how you want it to go.
Yeah.
So triggers start happening, and you start being triggered by things. And at that time, I didn't recognize what any of them were. I just knew that it would happen if I was stressed out.
Okay.
Even took me a long time to, kind of identify triggers. So in London, I start going to a holistic naturopath. And he can obviously see that there's something more going on with me, because I am like, my hair is brittle, my nails are brittle. I'm allergic to so many things so quickly. I have really terrible allergies. And because, like, obviously my gut bacteria is not balanced, and because of the eating disorder, and and so I'm going to this practitioner trying to get help, but I can't even admit to him that I have a problem. So I'm blaming it on all these other things. I must be allergic to this. I must be allergic to that. I'm allergic to like tree pollen and stuff. But no, that you're not telling him what's actually going on. And so I sat there knowing full well what was going on, but I couldn't bring myself to tell, because I was so ashamed. I really wanted to be better. I wanted to so much be better, but I couldn't even admit to myself that there was a huge issue, that it was huge, and that it wasn't this tiny little thing that you'd locked away. It was starting to take over your life. So that was an unsuccessful and really thinly veiled attempt at recovery. Then I moved to Scotland, and thinking fresh start.
I know, yeah.
Thinking, it's great that I can laugh about this now, but like, it's not funny. It's just like, a nervous mechanism that you do. So I moved to Scotland, and me thinking it's going to be left behind. No. In the same situation, new place, getting used to a new area. I was very lucky that I had friends there, so my kind of adaptation period wasn't as severe as moving to London. Because moving to London, it was like me and my sister against the world, and then moving to Scotland, my sister stayed in London, so and Ulrich come with me to Scotland.
Your partner, Ulrich.
Yeah. And then I got there, and it didn't go away.
It's amazing that it just comes with you, right?
It just comes with. And I got to I think I had been in Scotland for like a year and a half, and as a lot of people with eating disorders will know, it's exhausting. And sometimes you're so tired that you can't get out of bed, because you literally, whatever eating disorder you have or affliction that you have, you're not treating your body well. You're not treating your mental health good.
No.
And it's very hard to separate yourself from the idea that this isn't actually you. It's something you're experiencing. That's a huge thing that you need to be able. It's very hard to separate that narrative, because you just believe this is what I am. I've become this, and it's not. It's not. It's so important for people to realize that this is something that you are experiencing. It is not who you are. And I got to a point where I was constantly exhausted. I looked in the mirror one day and I was like, you don't look happy. You're not happy, Amandah. What? You're not happy right now. What are you doing? And obviously when you try and self-medicate, you go through periods where you're totally good and you're great. But then again, that's also it's also a cycle of punishment and reward. It's like you're manifesting it into different areas of your life. And I got to a point where I was just exhausted, and I was like, this needs to stop. I need to, and this is the point where I actually wanted help.
Okay.
I was ready.
Okay.
I was ready for help. I was ready for this. I was ready to admit to myself I had a problem, and it took 15 years, you know?
Okay.
So I, feeling really brave, feeling really nervous, but, putting on a brave front. I go to the doctor, I make an appointment, and I get the same response. First off, they make me do like a body check. So they weigh me. They do all of those things that you do in PE gym class, which you hate. And then they tell me that I can't possibly have an eating disorder because of my weight,
Wow.
because of how I look. And they give me a pamphlet with a phone number on it. And they say, call this number, and they will have an assessment with you over the phone. They'll assess you over the phone and decide whether you're suitable for treatment and help.
Okay.
This
is at a doctor. This is a doctor.
A doctor, a GP. Yeah. So basically what you do is you go to this kind of place first to see if you can get help. So I get a pamphlet. I call the number and it's disconnected and it doesn't work.
You're like, thanks for this pamphlet that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Already it's a horror show to get a pamphlet and be told that they will assess you over the phone to see whether you're suitable. And this included that you telling them your clothing size and your weight. Do you know?
That should not be a part of it at all.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. To assess whether you are suitable for eating disorder treatment. Right? So I hope
it's gotten better. God,
I hope so too. Sorry. I hope I just had a shit experience,
Yeah.
So I get this number. I call this number. It's disconnected. I search online for this number. I cannot find this number. I search online for an appointment. I cannot get an appointment. So I give up. I'm like, oh, okay, well, something really doesn't want me to get better. Or, I didn't even think of it as like a hurdle, as like a test to be told something that you don't want to hear and then have to kind of find your own solution. So,
and that's what you did.
Yeah, I did. I had read and I had learned about kinesiology, which is a practice where it's about body response. And I should tell you guys now is that, my mom being from Indonesia, we have a very strong connection with the spirit. We have a very strong connection with the earth, and we believe in, a spiritual world and the universe. And some would call this voodoo and magic, but it's not. It's just a way of being. And so I decided I would I would see whether kinesiology would help. And I started going to a practitioner who was different from a medical kinesiologist because she also worked on energy. And I started going to her, and this was when I started to really recover. So I had a really great period for a year. My first session, I went to her, and for a year, I thought that I was free.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know whether it was just because I actually felt comfortable telling, and I actually was given.
Felt heard.
I was heard. I was given home reinforcements to do, practice at home. Some of them which involved just singing, which is like, I had to sing 2 songs to myself to kind of learn how. It was more of the angle of learning how to love yourself than anything else.
That's a huge part of recovery.
Yes. So we went right to the root of the issue straight away, and which I was not expecting. Yeah. I was expecting baby steps. No, I got thrown in head first, and I learned how to swim.
So you sang 2 songs. What other work would you do?
I had to sing 2 songs. I had to I had to I had to practice like talking to myself kindly. I had to, she said to me, think about, you wouldn't say things like this to your best friend, so why are you saying it to yourself? Just stuff like putting up notes on your mirror that's saying like, good morning, have a great day, or like, you know, I love you, and having like a note on the, you know, so just really things that people would think are small and like might make fun of, but really, really help turn me around. Just really simple stuff like allowing yourself to like not plan your entire day around food, trying not to do that. Trying to relax, meditation. So there was a lot of home reinforcements which I had to do. Another one was taking care of a plant and like speaking positive energy to the plant, and like just like really
love this. Yeah, there's actually a science has been done that shows that if you are kind to a plant, if you say nice things, the plant thrives, and then if you have bad energy, the plant will die. Simon, my partner, he does not believe in this. He's probably laughing right now, like listening to this recording, but truly, I think there is something with this positive energy and this kindness. I mean, even if it's not, then what kind of energy are you putting out into the world?
Yeah, for sure. And so I had these small, and each kind of month that I would go back, I would have these small reinforcements to do at home. And it pretty much, I was a shell of myself, and it made me become like myself again. It's like I started getting myself back, you know, and like, and with getting yourself back, you start to kind of, you stand up straighter, you wake up happier, you know, you go out into the world feeling better. And I had this for a year, and then I kind of relapsed. And, you know, and obviously it comes crashing down, as it does. Anybody who's familiar. And you punish yourself, and you feel guilty, and you feel shame. But this time what I did, instead of keeping the narrative to myself, I let people in and let them know what I was feeling. I talked to my boyfriend a lot, and he was like one of the main people that was there to support me through this entire thing. He really encouraged me. He was never judgmental. He encouraged me to continue seeking help, and was like, you know, I'm here if you need to talk. When you're having it bad, let me know. It was like, if there's anything I can do, let me know. He never once tried to influence my diet. He never once tried to tell me how to do anything. He was just there to listen. I think that's the most important thing, is having people around you to listen. Because you're not going to them for advice, you know, you're not going to them for what I think is you should do. You're going to them to just tell them how you feel, and try to work through your feelings by having somebody to talk to. So instead of quitting kinesiology, I just kept going back. And month after month, I would get my home reinforcements, and I would practice them. And I just kept going back, and I'm still showing up there, you know. And you obviously you will have your hard days, and you will have your excellent days. But I think the one thing you have to remember is that tomorrow is a new day, and you just have to keep pushing forward. You can't, and it's not to say like you can't have those feelings, because yes, those feelings are valid, and you need to feel those feelings. But you have to be kinder to yourself about it. I think like having kindness and patience with yourself is the way to kind of just make it doesn't become such a huge thing. When you're like, okay, if I'm taking this step by step, that's okay. I didn't have such a great day yesterday, but that's okay. I had to feel those emotions. It's so important to feel the emotions, because when we stop trying to feel the emotions, you're trying to block the emotions. And that's never ideal.
Yeah. Now, you're mentioning something with your own recovery story. Oftentimes with eating disorder recovery, people think it's just going to be this straight
linear
line, and then I'm clear, I'm good to go, I'm going to live my life, and nothing's ever going to happen. But in times of great stress, or in times of change, if you're moving to a new country or whatever is happening, then sometimes relapses happen, and that's completely normal. And the thing is to, like what you were doing, is to keep going forward, to not judge it, to say, okay, well, this is what happened today, but it doesn't make me a bad person. It's this that I'm dealing with, and it's really tough. So having someone to listen to you, having your partner feeling open about it and communicating is so big, because eating disorders thrive when you hold them in. When you block people out, you keep it to yourself. So it sounds like you've developed some great tools, Amanda.
Yeah, and it's like this, you keep it like this secret.
Yeah.
And it's
and
such
the power.
And like it gives it power, 100%. But I was just so lucky that I would talk about it with friends. I'd touch on it with my sister, and she's always been there for me. And like I would talk about it with my bandmates, and they were always there for me. But I only went like really deep with my kinesiologist and with Ulrich, where I was like really just like where it's raw, where it's like would probably be too much for others, where it's like really raw, where you're really getting to the nitty gritty of it and how you actually really feel.
But it's important to do. It's important to talk about.
It is, because it's like, it's not. And then when you vocalize how you're feeling, you're able to actually kind of stand back and be like, wow, I'm giving so much power to this thing. And you're really able to assess how that's affecting your relationship with yourself. Yeah.
I love that. And then in terms of your recovery too, what has been something that has been a big part of that? What kind of self-care do you do? Is your music, singing twice a day, songwriting, how big has that been in your recovery?
Oh, really important. Like I wrote a whole EP during this time where I was having trouble. And I didn't actually realize that it was about that until I went back and listened to it.
Okay.
You're
working through things. You're
and that's the thing, is that you don't. For me, when I make music, I don't consciously sit down and think about what I'm going to make. It just kind of comes and it happens, and then I walk away and I come back, and then later I make sense of what's going on and what it's actually about. I wrote loads of songs about it. And if you listen to them from someone else's point of view, they just sound like a love song or whatever, but it's not.
What songs would you recommend then for our listeners? Is this Bossy Love then, or?
These are songs that I still have, some of them.
Okay, you haven't released. Okay.
No, I haven't released. I'm trying to think if anything on the record is kind of about injustice to yourself. I don't think it is.
Okay.
No, I don't think it is. Obviously obviously in the Bossy Love record, there's a lot of transformative stuff, because I wrote that at such not an intense period of my life, but such a different period of my life. I just moved overseas. I was new. But there's there is a lot of pain turned into good in that record, in Me and You, the album. So people should listen, of course.
Of course. I highly recommend it as well, too. Now, a few questions I ask everyone in the recovery series. The first one is, has there been anything that's been a challenge or a little bit difficult with your recovery story?
Holidays and family dinners. I have a hard time sometimes I have a hard time in summer. Just because obviously you tend to want to wear less clothes. You're hyper aware of how this looks, or how you look, or like how you feel. So you have to take that. I have to take that day by day. Sometimes, even now, sometimes there's days where I feel like oh, you're not good enough to go outside. It is.
You are.
It's terrible.
You
I
are,
know,
and
but
then you
it's
put it
terrible.
on the mirror saying you are, and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's little things that come up here and there for me. And as we talked before, I just try to take those day by day and voice them. When I'm feeling that, I voice it out loud and either take a moment of reflection and realize that I am being a critic to myself. And I think also when you just realize that people don't actually care. Like people are so concerned about how they, they're doing the same thing you're doing. You're not alone in this. So once you realize that, like, everybody's got their own shit, that kind of makes it a little bit easier. And that's not to diminish how you're feeling, but that's also another thing you got to think about, is that you're always going to be your own worst critic with everything.
Yeah.
If you're cooking and like it and it doesn't go the way you want, you're always apologizing for it to other people who think it's totally fine and are really loving it, enjoying it.
Yeah. I think that's so funny too. It kind of reminds me of public speaking in high school, or not high school, in university. I used to get so nervous and so self-conscious of myself. But then when I looked around the room, no one gave a crap about what I was talking about. Like oftentimes people would just be like looking down. They'd be like looking at the clock. But they did that for everyone. I hope it wasn't just me actually. But like people don't care as much. Another thing I want to hit on too is that you're not alone with. During the summertime, it can be really challenging too, and holidays are always kind of hard. And there's a lot of resources out there for people who have struggled with an eating disorder or with body image too. And so I'll link some of those on the wall or the description. And so it's so important. But has there been anything that has been helpful in your recovery or positive?
Positive. Oh, there's so many positives. There are so many positives. I guess it's just like knowing that you do have people you can speak to, knowing that it is good to talk. Like this conversation. If you had asked me to be involved in something like this even maybe a year ago, I would have just shut it down straight away.
Yeah.
You
have been looking at the phone or the clock, like.
Well, yeah, like I wasn't ready. I think coming to, it's okay to talk about it. It's not a shameful thing. No, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be open about it, and it's okay to admit to yourself that you have a problem. It's okay to talk about it because it doesn't define you. It's not you. It's something you're experiencing. I've just had a really supportive group of people. And I think also when you're on that kind of wavelength of kindness and consideration and, respecting your fellow being, you tend to attract those types of people in your life. And you don't attract like that, you don't attract kind of anybody that's not on that wavelength if that's the kind of energy that you're putting out. So that's the kind of energy I always try to put out. And I think the main positive, a huge positive that I believe that I have realized from an eating disorder and in my recovery is that it's turned me into a way less judgmental person to others. And like, not that I ever was super judgy, but I come from a place of, I try to do everything coming from a place of love and coming from a place of consideration and empathy and, and it's just like, it's made me realize that everybody has something going on and, just a little act of kindness in your everyday can make the biggest difference. Smiling at someone on the street. And it's like such a cliche thing that people say, but it's a cliche for a reason. Like smiling at people, being kind at the checkout, those types of things, holding a door open. Like telling somebody that their outfit looks amazing or that you think their hair is great. Like just, it's small things. It's small things really do sometimes make such a big difference. And just trying to come from a place of understanding and empathy rather than trying to find a solution for things constantly. Listening, being a good listener as well, because you want people to listen to you, and just respecting people and accepting them for who they are and how they are. That's the hardest thing, is because like you can't necessarily change people, but you can accept them for how they are and know that that's how they are, and then that way it makes it easier.
Yeah. Well, I think you do a really good job of doing that and putting good energy out there. And you're one of the most, I think, self-assured from my eyes. You seem so comfortable in your skin too. I think that's very contagious and great.
It's taken me a long time to get here, but I'm grateful for the journey.
Good. And if you have any messages that you want to put forward, or things you want to share about recovery, or advice for anyone in the UK, in Australia, or anywhere around the world, what would you say?
I would say you really have to trust your gut. And this is another one, is that not people that you think are going to have the right answer for you sometimes won't. And that shouldn't be a way of trying to dismiss it like it's nothing. If you, in your gut, if you feel in your gut that what they're telling you is wrong, it is. Do you know? And if you really feel it in your guts, because that's your intuition center, when something's not right, but there are other alternatives. It's not just a medical alternative sometimes, for very, I'm not encouraging people to like self-medicate, obviously, or to go to a spiritual healer if that's not right for you. It's something that's ingrained in my upbringing and my, in my life from my mom. So that's not always everybody's path, but you really do have to trust your intuition. And sometimes it takes a few different doctors to go to for someone to really identify that something's wrong, and for really somebody, that one doctor or that one person, to be, to stand up and be like, okay, we need to get you some help. So it might take going to a few different doctors, but keep going. You will find whoever you're supposed to work through this with, or you will find what path you're supposed to go on. You will find it.
I think the first episode that we had, it was at the Dr. Joy Zelikovsky, and she runs a treatment center actually. And what she was saying is that treatment is the way to go with eating disorder recovery, but it looks different from culture to culture and society to society too.
It does.
So I think you're so right that I guess treatment is important, and it sounds like you have come a long way and that you are doing well from that standpoint too. But yeah, treatment is such a good thing too, and it's interesting to hear your background and how it differs from mine with treatment and that kind of thing. So
I mean, I think and that's also another thing to recognize, is that an eating disorder is a very complex issue. It's not a blanket issue, and you can't just get another sheet and write someone else's name on it, because there are so many things that go into it. There's so many different eating disorders. It's not just your one or two issues that are a lot of people that have never experienced it believe as well. It's you might not even know exactly what's happening with you or what the term for it is. You have to speak up and really, really try to explain exactly what's going on. You can't really hold anything back. You shouldn't hold anything back just to be less difficult, because that is a thing that happens, is because you've always thought this issue was so difficult for everybody, you keep it to yourself. As much as that can be painful to relive, it's very important for your step forward.
100%. Yeah, I'm so glad that you shared that message, and thank you for being honest and open with your own recovery story and your own experiences too. It's such a joy to chat with you and to learn a little bit more about your background too. So thank you for today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll talk soon. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, Amanda. Yeah.
You too.
Bye.